With Puka Nacua and IR, Cooper Kupp is back to being a dominant fantasy wide receiver. We discuss our week 2 wide receiver tight end rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Welcome, everybody. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting for sportingnews.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Yesterday, we went through our running back and quarterback rankings for week 2 of the fantasy season. Now we're going to get into our wide receivers and tight ends. Again, a lot to get into, so we're just going to jump right into it, starting with our wide receivers. At the top, we both have Tyreek Hill. No shocker there. But you're putting Cooper Kupp all the way up as your number 2 fantasy wide receiver this week. At first, when I glanced at that, I was like, Vinny's crazy. And then I looked at my rankings and he was 4th. And I was like, oh, wait. So we both have him extremely high. Talk to us about Cooper Kupp, Vinny.
Yeah, his trajectory keeps on shooting up, and now the Puka Nacua injury puts him into the spotlight here as the clear go-to guy. They're trying to figure out who else is in the rotation. Demarcus Robinson was making plays last week, but they also have rookie Jordan Whittington that should get a few more looks here. But that all means Cooper Kupp's going to dominate. And Colby Parkinson's new to this offense, as well as a tight end with Tyler Higbee, also not available for this team. So that all says Cooper Kupp's going to get a lot of targets. The Cardinals struggled last week in the slot, letting Khalil Shakir make a big play and a touchdown. Shakir is primarily the slot receiver now for the Bills. So Cooper Kupp, we know, can line up the slot. He's going to get outside. They're going to scheme him open. This is old school. Throw it back to Super Bowl MVP Cooper Kupp right now. And as long as he's staying healthy, he can smash it here with just massive target volume. And we thought we had seen everything from him. Then he took it to another level with his opportunities there in week 1.
Yeah, the Cardinals secondary is bad. Cooper Kupp is going to be able to have a great game with Matthew Stafford. Now, the other wide receivers in our top 7, we have the same guys, just in a different order, with CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Justin Jefferson. One guy I did not name here who's typically in our top 7, but after week 1 worries with the Bengals, he's just outside of it for us. Jamar Chase, I have him at wide receiver 8. You have him at 9. Are you worried about Jamar Chase going into week 2, or do you think he has a nice bounce back week against the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm optimistic overall that the Bengals will find their best selves against the Chiefs. They always play well with Joe Burrow at quarterback. And we'll see about T. Higgins if he can return from the hamstring. But you figure Jamar Chase is going to eat up a lot of targets. This game, the Chiefs secondary played pretty well, but Chase is a hard guy to cover, especially if you move him around all over the formation. So I think Chase will be fine. I think potentially he could get really high volume in this game if the running game is kind of stymied and the Chiefs get out to a lead. They're going to have to throw to Jamar Chase quite a bit if Higgins is either slowed or not playing in this game. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll say that the talent level is there to not put him outside of the wide receiver ones in the top 12.
Yeah, I mean, he's been able to do it against the Chiefs, right? He's averaged 135 receiving yards per game in his 3 games against the Chiefs. You would think it would even get easier now that they don't have L'Jarius Sneed. It will be interesting matchup for sure, but Jamar Chase is needed. Like, if the Bengals are going to bounce back, Jamar Chase is so needed to have a huge game. One guy I have in my top 10 is Rashid Rice going in the same matchup against the Bengals. I really like him this week. And you have Malik Nabers inside your top 10 against the Commanders. I also have Nabers ranked pretty highly. I have him as my wide receiver 15. And then you have Rashid Rice a little bit. You have him at 15. So they're basically just flip flop for us, right?
Yeah.
So, but we do both like both of these guys. The reason I like Rice is just because the target share he got last week, it was exactly what we were seeing from the end of last season, where he was dominant at the end of last season with the targets he was getting. He was averaging, he's averaged 16 fantasy points per game over his last 9 games played. I just think he's going to continue to be Patrick Mahomes' top guy, and it's going to be a high-scoring matchup with the Bengals and the Chiefs. So Rashid Rice all the way, and I also like Malik Nabers, but do you want to talk about why you have him top 10 against the Commanders?
Yeah, it's not because of Daniel Jones. I'm going to tell you that right away. It's just that he's going to get open a lot, and there's going to be volume a lot for the Giants. And he had a nice game, considering Jones is just terrible, just really bad. Like, I can't expect him to be this bad. The Vikings defense is pretty tough. They're aggressive, but the Commanders don't have a lot against the pass. Their coverage is very weak at this point on the outside. Nabers is going to eat up a lot. If you're in a deeper league, you could look at Wandal Robinson, but you have to trust more in Jones if you're looking for more than one guy to produce here in this matchups. But Nabers, the talent is just there. I think it's too hard to deny him. And Rashid Rice, look, they probably need to give Travis Kelce a little bit more this week. We'll see. They just trash talk Xavier Worthy on the other side of the Bengals, so maybe they'll want to get Worthy going in this game as well. But Rice will be solid. I don't think he'll be as great as he was in week one, where they kind of let the middle of the field open up there and let him do whatever he wanted. This week, I think you'll see Kelce get a little bit more into the act, but Rice still a very strong play.
Yeah, they're both strong plays. You get both of them into your lineups with Nabers and Rice. One guy I wouldn't want into my lineups, but you do. You have DJ Moore. You're holding strong with the DJ Moore rank. You have him as your wide receiver 10. This player is the one we're most different about. It was last week and this week. Still down at wide receiver at 30. He finished as wide receiver 44 last week with the Bears offense just looking atrocious. And I know Keenan Allen's banged up and Rome Odunze is likely to miss, but then that just means that DJ Moore is going to get Derek Stingley. Like, that doesn't make me excited, right? That's why I still am keeping him low. I'm off on DJ Moore this week.
Well, this is what you wanted, right, Michelle? From last year, he was the
Targets.
target guy. Yeah, he's the target guy.
Can Caleb Williams target him, though, is the question.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. And this matchup on the road is pretty tough. First rookie quarterback matchup on the road for Caleb Williams. So we'll see how it plays out. But we're hoping the Texans do pretty well here, have a lead, and the Bears are stuck throwing, because there was a lot of things we didn't expect. That Keenan Allen was inconsistent. You didn't have Rome Odunze healthy. They were throwing to Gerald Everett instead of Cole Kmet. So a lot of weird things with that Shane Waldron offense were in play in week one. They got to overcorrect to get DJ Moore the ball as much as possible. They just paid him a lot of money in the offseason as a number one. He'll get a little bit more this week. They can move him around. And keep in mind, the Texans do give up big plays, as they did last week. So DJ Moore can maybe get it for you in 5 or 6 good opportunities in this game and be productive. But he's kind of a squeaky wheel. That's why I'm going with him. And again, I wasn't impressed. And now the availability of the other Bears options are in question.
Yeah, if Keenan Allen doesn't play, I'll move up DJ Moore a bit. But if Keenan Allen's still out there, I'm keeping him right at wide receiver 30. Now, one guy I like more than you, Amari Cooper, this week against the Packers. You have him wide receiver 22. I have him at wide receiver 13. I might actually end up moving him up more than that, too. I said against the Packers. He plays the Jaguars. I'm sorry. His week one performance was terrible, right? As well as all of the Browns offense. He had 9 targets and only came down with 2 of them. It was a bad game overall. I'm willing to throw that week one game away, though. I really am, because the Cowboys defense looks so good. They're so smothering. The Jaguars are just not going to be that. They don't have nearly as good of a pass rush. Their secondary is really bad. It was last year. And then last week, they allowed Tua to throw for 338 yards. Both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had over 100 receiving yards. Like, Amari Cooper should get even more targets this week because David Njoku's out. So I think the target share that he's going to see, if he gets double-digit targets, it's not going to be like it was in week one, because the Jaguars' secondary is just not good enough. Amari Cooper will have a really good game, I think, in week 2.
Yeah, I just know right now, don't trust the front end of this with Deshaun Watson. Like, I saw some things that really worried me. I'd feel a lot better in a weird way if James Winston was out there in this game, and maybe it'll happen. If Watson struggles again against the Jaguars, I mean, Jaguars not the defense the Cowboys are, you might see Winston, who had a very good preseason, kind of firing up this team. They might go in that direction. Winston, we know, takes care of guys like Cooper, much like we saw with Joe Flacco, taking care of Cooper and Njoku last year. So be very interesting to see what Cooper can do. He's got a rebound here this week. It's a much easier matchup. And if he doesn't, then I would really worry if Watson struggles to get the ball to him. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr., he was really upset about his performance. He was talking about it all this week. So he got another squeaky wheel about to get the grease. And The Rams defense, I think, is going to oblige here. They're back at home, so that could be also very comfortable here for him. So I think he'll be okay. But right now, we have to be a little bit conservative, go with him kind of in the wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, I have him ranked 19. You have him 18. It's
Yeah.
hard, right? He needs to bounce back. They need to utilize him more. It's nice, though, that the Cardinals head coach, Jonathan Gannon, said they're going to make sure he gets the ball more because he's going to need to. He did run the most routes on the team in week 1, right? He just didn't get the targets. Hopefully he can do that against the Rams. Jamison Williams just had a huge day against the Rams. Like, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. can do it as well, but we're being a little bit more conservative there. I'm still plugging him into my lineup, so I'm not giving up on him after just 1 week. He is a rookie. We're going to get into more of our, wide receiver 2 plays that we like or that we have differing opinions about in our next segment after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by DoorDash, and you want to trust delivery powered by DoorDash because it's your top really on-demand delivery platform out there. And really, DoorDash is so reliable, and we always need it for game day, right? I mean, we're busy. Michelle and I are watching games wall to wall. We're writing stuff for our publications and then looking at things we want to talk about on the show. Well, we can make it a lot easier on ourselves by trusting DoorDash to deliver what we need. And really, it's the best thing, whether it's a pizza or tacos, anything you need, energy to push you through the day. Maybe it's energy drinks, things that you need to just be there and not to worry about what you're going to have for lunch, snack, dinner, get you through the whole days. For me, I like to have a little bit of an energy drink, coffee in the morning. Those are the type of things that you can get easily from DoorDash with their powered delivery here. Check it out, and really, they're going to keep you fueled all day long, and they'll take care of you, and you can trust that they'll be there when you need them most for you. And Sundays are the best days because call DoorDash, and they will make sure that you're all good to go all day long. Use the promo code LOCKEDFOLLOW24 for 50% off of a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order on DoorDash. That's a limited time offer. Terms do apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. Keep that in mind. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now and go order your game day favorites ahead of Sunday. Must be 21 and over to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by Hims, and it can be tough. We leave the house. We're looking at our phone, wallet, keys, but then we ask, how's our hair look? But if you're experiencing hair loss, you may not be so confident when you step outside your door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair only with Hims. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. You also get personal chewable oral spray or serum treatment options so you can find what works best for you. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers. So if you feel like you're losing part of yourself with your hair loss, get Hims and get your confidence back. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/LockedOnNFL. It's hims.com, HIMS.com, LockedOnNFL for your personalized hair loss treatment options. Again, hims.com/LockedOnNFL. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil prescription. Products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information only at Hims. All right, it is time to continue the show here, Michelle, and look at some other guys that we are hopeful that will either keep it up or rebound this week. Jaden Reed, he had a very hot start there. He was right up there among the leaders. He was actually the leader in fantasy scoring at wide receiver in week 1. He did some damage on the ground. He was great, but the problem is he has Malik Willis at starting quarterback this week. It's also a tough matchup. He's not exclusive in the slot, but Kenny Moore is there. So keep that in mind. He was pretty good whenever the Texans receivers were there. So what do you do here with Jaden Reed? On one hand, he's a hot hand. The other, he's losing his quarterback, and we're not sure if he can explode the same way.
Yeah, the thing with this offense is that Matt LaFleur is so good at scheming guys open, right? So Malik Willis is going to have wide open guys to target. Can he hit them? I still don't know, right? Like Malik Willis may be one of the worst backups to have in the league.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be in a system as a backup, you want to be in a Kyle Shanahan system or a Matt LaFleur system. And LaFleur really does not get enough credit for how
Yeah.
wide open he gets his guys. And Jayden Reed is so good at getting wide open as well. So he's going, I think they're going to try to feed him because what he could do after the catch, what he can do as a runner too. He can be used in that Devo type of role as a runner. So I still have him ranked as wide receiver 18. I'm still plugging him in. I don't think it's going to be obviously as big of a week as it was in week one with Malik Willis, but Reed has scored the 9th most fantasy points among all wide receivers since week 10 last year. You got to keep plugging him in.
Yeah, they can find ways to go to the ball. We know he scored on a rush last week, so they can put the ball in his hands. The shorter passes, Malik Willis can complete those to him. So they can do things to scheme him open. They won't exclusively have him in the slot against Moore either. So he's fine. I'm just going to drop him a little bit just because I'm not totally sold on Willis, but I think what will make up for it, the matchup and the quarterback issue, is just his usage and the way they get him open. Now, in the same game, you have Michael Pittman Jr. He kind of disappeared. It was like an underrated story from week one that it was the big Alec Pierce play from Anthony Richardson, but not a lot here. Jair Alexander, we'll see. He's been a shutdown corner, but not maybe at that level this week. They did allow a big play to A.J. Brown last week. Devonta Smith also had a pretty good game. I'm as wide receiver 17. You have him as wide receiver 24. What do we think on Pittman this week?
I think he's a really solid play. I'd prefer to play him in a full PPR league, but I think he's a solid play overall in this game. I have him as a low end or wide receiver too, but he got 8 targets last week. That did lead the team. I expect him to have a much better week, bounce back. And the Packers defense, I know they're all excited about getting a new defensive coordinator, but they look just as bad as always. So, yeah, I'm fine with playing Michael Pittman this week.
Yeah, I think you have to keep plugging him. I mean, you drafted him early. He's still the go-to guy there. The targets are still there. The numbers will come eventually, and they can move around a little bit, and he can be the short intermediate guy in this game, and that could actually really help him against the Packers. Now, looking at Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs, now interesting that Diggs kind of was the slot guy. Dell got some looks there as well, but it was a little bit of a split slot situation here. Now, the slot is very important because that's where the Bears are weak here with Kyler Gordon. Tyreek Stevenson, by the way, is your defensive player of the week in the NFC. So that's how good he was at corner opposite Jalen Johnson. Nico Collins, that's why I'm fading him this week really hard. But Dell Diggs, I think whenever they line up in the slot, they'll have a good shot here. So just being a little bit careful with them. But I think it's more one of these guys going off than Collins this week.
Yeah, if I'm gonna go with one of these two, Tank Dell or Diggs, it's Dell for me. Just like he got the downfield targets last week. It could, I mean, he was like a couple inches away from a huge game as well with Nico Collins. Diggs did score the 2 touchdowns, but that's what you're going to need. I mean, you're going to need him to score 2 touchdowns to have a happy week for him. And the Bears secondary is just too good for that. They've allowed 5 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers over the last 7 games played, dating back to last year. I'm not counting on that. I'm not excited to play Diggs. You can if necessary, but he is a guy I'm fading heading into week 2. I'm still okay with Collins and Dell. I think they'll move him around enough where it's not going to be a huge game for both of them, but I do think they're still going to have the opportunity for a big play or two. Your boy, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 23 for you, wide receiver 28 for me. Probably have him ranked too high, honestly, but he does get a nice matchup against the Giants. He only got 4 targets, 2 receptions, 17 yards last week. Will it be better in Jaden Daniels' second game with Terry McLaurin? The ball was just spread around like crazy.
Yeah, they got to figure this out. I mean, they got to get their wide receivers more involved. It was a lot of Austin Eckler, too much Austin Eckler at the tight ends and checkdowns and dump offs or Daniels taking off and running. They need to push the ball downfield, or they're going to be stuck with what they had with Sam Howell. They kind of were compressed there with Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy last year. Cliff Kingsbury's not supposed to do that. He's supposed to stretch the field vertically and horizontally. Terry McLaurin loves the Giants, by the way. He owns them. If he needs a get-well game badly like he does in week 2, seeing the Giants is very helpful. You should get Deonte Banks in coverage. You can absolutely destroy him. So just throw the ball to him. McLaurin is another guy that didn't see the ball enough, much like Marvin Harrison in week 1. I think that gets corrected here. And let Daniels loose. He's got a big arm. That's a big difference. And I think you'll see some of that with the banks this week because the Giants are going to stink in this game.
Yeah, if I need to, I'm willing to give McLaurin another chance, but he has scored fewer than 10 fantasy points in 8 of his last 10 games played. So he needs to start picking it up if I'm going to keep plugging him into any lineups. Now, Xavier Worthy and Jamison Williams both have huge games in week 1. Are we trusting Xavier Worthy coming into his second game in the NFL against the Bengals, or Jamison Williams against the Buccaneers? Because Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta really weren't used in week 1. You expect that to change in week 2. Can Jared Goff support all 3 guys? And then also Xavier Worthy just had those 2 huge plays. Can we count on those huge plays in week 2 against the Bengals?
I don't know if you can count on them, but I think he's earned himself a few more opportunities. I don't know if they'll be regular. So yeah, you do need big plays out of these guys, preferably for a touchdown to really pay off. But I think James Williams can pull off a big play in this one. He did last week. I think he's still kind of settling in as the receiver that we expected him to be. So I would trust him a little bit more. Where I think you could have Rice and Kelce be bigger factors there to cut into Worthy. Well, I think Williams is here to stay. I don't think he's going to keep kind of destroying it in relation to Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think he does a little bit to say that Jared Goff and keep throwing me downfield. They're trying to take away the shorter pass game and the running game, and that's opening things up deeper. So Williams will continue to see good looks, especially off play action.
I will say I do like both. I think I lean more towards Xavier Worthy in this matchup than I do Jamison Williams. Another guy I like is a deeper play here is Wandal Robinson. You brought him up earlier when we were talking about Malik Nabers against Washington. We know how bad Washington is, right? They're just a great defensive play, your fantasy wide receivers against. And Wandal Robinson had 12 targets last week. I mean, atrocious with them. 6 receptions, 44 yards. But if he gets that type of volume again, if he gets close to 10 targets, he's going to have a much better day. Washington especially struggles covering the slot. Last week, they allowed 139 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns out of the slot against the Buccaneers. So if and Robinson's the clear-cut slot guy with the Giants, all 6 of his receptions came from the slot. Only guy targeted more than one time on the Giants last week from the slot. So Robinson can have a big game. Would you rather go with Robinson or Ladd McConkey, who had an okay game? He scored a touchdown. That's really what saved his day in his first NFL debut. But he gets the Panthers this week.
Yeah, if I'm going to say what team is going to have more pass attempts and dropbacks, I'm going to say the Giants. I think the Chargers will handle the Panthers pretty well this week. Now, McConkey did get in the end zone last week in his rookie debut, but it's just going to be hard to trust, and he could be a bit touchdown dependent. I think Robinson, let's just say this. If you're looking in a PPR leading league, either full PPR or half, you might go to Robinson. If you're in a standard league looking for the score, you might go with McConkey, and that's maybe how you split the difference and move on if you need some wide receiver 3 help this week.
Yeah, I lean the Robinson side. McConkey, I just don't know if the Chargers are going to have to pass it all. I mean, because
they might
Panthers
not.
just look so atrocious. We're going to get into our tight end rankings. Now, I will say when we did these tight end rankings last week, it was a lot more exciting. We were a lot more hopeful about this group, and then they just completely destroyed our souls in week 1. But we're going to try to get through this for you and figure out who's going to bounce back next week. We'll finish up with our rankings with the tight ends right after a quick break. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. Looking at tonight's odds, especially like the player props, I'm loving all the Josh Allen props. He owns the Miami Dolphins. I especially love his passing plus rushing prop at 283. That's what it was yesterday. Take that over. He averages over 330 total yards against the Dolphins in his career. He just absolutely dominates them. So that's a bet I'm looking at on FanDuel for tonight. To place your NFL bets before the weekend, just visit FanDuel.com and to download America's #1 sportsbook. At the top of your tight end rankings, Vinny, You're saying Travis Kelce is bouncing back, baby. He is your tight end 1. I have him at tight end 4, so clearly I also think he will have a nice bounce back week. But why are you confident in him against the Bengals to put him right at the top?
Yeah, he tends to play really well against the Bengals. If you look at his history, and maybe it's having to do with being an Ohio person who went to Cincinnati, so maybe there's something in the back of his mind. I got to look good in front of this team that some of my friends and family could be watching. I think the same goes when they play the Browns. So when you look at that, and he's also going to be playing angry with a chip on his shoulder. There's been some stuff going on off the field that he's going to need to take it out on something, and he's going to show it up on Sunday. And again, he's heard all the stuff. The Bengals already trash talking a little bit this week. So I think there's a little bit of motivation, chip on the shoulder this week to try to come out there and produce. Plus, he's Travis Kelce. And I think that's going to just help. I mean, just the fact that the Bengals know that he gets open against them often. They still have some safety coverage issues. So I do like this matchup overall for Travis Kelce. And if he had a quiet first game, that would only tell you that he's due here for what we usually see out of him. And I just like this matchup. I like the way Kelsey's coming into the game. So all those good things here, and maybe have a little bit more opportunity to open them up, because I don't think you'll see the coverage, right, that was basically here, throw it to Rashid Rice all game long. I don't think you'll see that in this particular game against Lou Anarumo and the Bengals.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And we're still ranking Trey McBride and Sam Laporta highly. I have McBride at number 2, Sam Laporta at number 1. You have McBride at 2, Laporta at 3.
Yeah.
Also, Kyle Pitts, keep plugging him in. We both have him top 5. I'm at 3. You have him at 5. Now, Mark Andrews was a huge disappointment in week 1 as well as like all tight ends besides Isaiah Likely. But that was the thing, right? Like Isaiah Likely took all of his shine playing mostly like out of the slot as a wide. He wasn't even like really playing the tight end position for Likely, but Andrews did play a ton of snaps. He had the second most routes run among all tight ends last week. He didn't get the targets, but I do expect more targets to come his way this week. Like the Chiefs weren't ready to have to focus on Isaiah Likely. Like they went into this game focusing on stopping Mark Andrews. That's normally Lamar Jackson's top guy. And, they caught him off guard there. I don't think the Raiders are going to be as caught off guard. I think they're going to go back to utilizing Mark Andrews, especially in the end zone. I expect this to be a blowout by the Ravens. And for it to be a blowout, there's going to have to be points in the beginning of the game, right? And some passing. So I like Andrews, just plugging him right back in. I'm not all too worried about Likely. And Likely is obviously also a fine play. We know that he has a super high ceiling.
Well, you know what's going to happen. Isaiah Likely is going to have a really quiet game. Mark Andrews is going to have a very throwback Mark Andrews game, and everyone's going to be complaining about Isaiah Likely that you just picked up last week that you had no intention of playing. You're like, what's wrong with Likely? Well, he had a spike game last week based on the matchup, so they were just still letting that happen. And keep in mind, he's also their big play guy. That's one thing to keep in mind. This team lost Odell Beckham Jr. They didn't keep him. Nelson Aguilar and Rashad Bateman are out stretching the field with Zay Flowers. They need someone to make those plays. I know Andrews can too. So I think it was a product of that particular matchup, the way the Chiefs line up their safeties. I think in this game you'll see Andrews back up to his old tricks. So basically, like as you mentioned, the Ravens can do anything they want. I think playing off the running game in this one.
Yeah, and I'm still fine with playing Isaiah Likely as well. We both have him
Yeah,
ranked
you
as
can
their
play
tight
both.
end 7. Yeah. The tight ends aren't looking as great as we thought. Like if you picked him up, he is a fine start. We also both have George Kittle at 6, and he's inconsistent, right? But we know that he can go off in any given week. And if you drafted him, you knew going into it that you're just going to have to play him every week, and he's going to give you a lot of down weeks, but he'll also give you those game-winning weeks. Now, Brock Bowers, he somehow finishes as a tight end 5 last week because of how atrocious the tight ends were. But he had a solid enough game for a rookie tight end. I mean, 6 receptions, 58 yards, didn't get into the end zone, but a solid game against the Chargers last week. But can he do that against the Ravens? That's going to be a lot harder for him, who they just covered up Travis Kelce, no issues whatsoever. I have Bowers at 10. You have him at 8. I guess he's playable, but I don't expect him to have as good of a game as last week, and it wasn't even that crazy of a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be involved. That's the one thing we like, that Gardner Minshew is throwing to him, and we have to see. I mean, it was disappointing for Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. So I don't know when they'll turn the page to Aiden O'Connell. Do they have to get destroying this game to go in that direction. I mean, I like O'Connell only because he tends to put the ball in the hands of the main guys a little bit more than Minshew. I don't know. He seemed okay starting that game, but then it was like, he's really hurting everyone out there. So we'll see if they make the change, if they fall to 0-2. But Bowers, again, the talent is there. They're going to scheme him open. So I'm not too worried. Again, I just can't expect a very high ceiling available in this Raiders offense from him yet. But a floor is there, definitely, if he keeps getting that decent look volume.
Now, Colby Parkinson for the Rams is a guy that we both like is taking a flyer on this week. If you lost David Njoku, this could be a nice pickup for you. I have him at tight end 12. Vinny has him at tight end 15. He ran the most routes among all tight ends in week one. It ended up in 5 targets, 4 receptions, 47 yards, but so nothing crazy. But also at the same time with Puka Nacua out, like Stafford's going to have to pass to some other guys, and maybe that is DeMarcus Robinson or Tyler Johnson, but I do think Parkinson will get his share as well. So against the Cardinals, I do think Parkinson's a very solid start if you're looking for someone to replace a David Njoku or a Jake Ferguson if he were to miss as well.
Yeah, I feel like Colby Parkinson's becoming like Greg Dulcich or Adam Troutman from the past, like some guy that becomes like a fantasy legend in our minds that we're going to throw out each week and hope that he lives up to the expectations because it's fun to say, hey, Colby Parkinson is a thing. We'll have to see, all right? I want to see how those targets are distributed without Nacua. They're still pretty much an 11 personnel team. And the tight end sometimes is a factor, sometimes it's not from week to week. Last week, what did we see? The Cardinals, it was easy to throw everything else, and Dalton Kincaid had a quiet game. So let's see what we get from Colby Parkinson. Maybe we like the idea better than the execution. Maybe we'll like the execution coming out of this week, right? And which will be fine. But yeah, I need to see a little bit more on how the targets are distributed to go there. But again, if you're hurting, this position stinks. You could get 4 catches for 40 yards from him and still crack the top 12. So who knows this week? So that still could be available to you. But I think there's some better options. The one thing that we hope is that Jake Ferguson plays because that would bring back a good option as well this week against the Saints.
Yeah, I will say on the other side, though, for the Saints, like I don't really want to go into the Foster Moreau or Juwan Johnson bucket this week against the Cowboys. They both finished as top 4 fantasy tight ends this week just because they scored a touchdown. I mean, it was 43 yards for Moreau and 26 yards for Juwan Johnson. And again, they both finished as top 4. They just got into the end zone. They barely ran any routes. Foster Moreau ran 13 routes. Juwan Johnson ran 12. Taysom Hill only ran 6. Like the one I would still play just for some upside would be Hill because maybe they'll need him around the goal line, but that's the only one. Like I'm not going with Moreau. I'm not going with Johnson in this particular matchup. I'm staying away from it.
Yeah, I have Hill actually cracking the top 12 because I think he can run well against the Cowboys. And that's what it comes down to. Will he get the opportunities? And he didn't look good. He just didn't get enough volume and he didn't score last week. So that's one thing with Taysom Hill is like you have to treat, can he supplement what Alvin Kamara is doing just enough and get some pay dirt? I think in this particular game, he's on the radar because David Njoku's out. Here you have Evan Ingram. We'll see. The Browns were pretty tough on the Cowboys last week. So that's why Parkinson's coming into play as someone we can think about after that. But in between Bowers, by the way, I have the 3 Ds. I like to call them Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz. I like their matchups this week and to all bounce back. And they were kind of all quiet in week 1. So I like that. And but Taysom Hill, definitely an option if you don't have the traditional tight end and need some help because this position, like you said, Michelle, could be a lot worse than we think all season long, and you might need more help making those lineup decisions.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch on Thursday Night Football the way Dalton Kincaid is used. Where you drafted him, you're still plugging him in, right? You can't give up on him after just 1 week. But if they, again, don't utilize him at all, I'm going to start sweating and getting very nervous. So that's something I'll be keeping a very close eye on tonight. That is it for today's episode. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers, Vinny and I will be back tomorrow to give you our favorite, sleepers of the week, favorite DFS plays, our FanDuel lineup, all that fun stuff to finish up the week as we head into the weekend. Have a great night, everybody. Bye, y'all.